Well, Lianne, actually, ironically, back in 1994, there was a herbalist suing Health Canada because Health Canada had seized herbs that he was legally importing in an effort to shut him down. And I was hired as counsel for Health Canada to go and act against this herbalist. And that was my first introduction to, the regulation of natural health products. And then the following year, I started my own law firm. And in Health Canada's second attempt to shut down this herbalist, they had the College of Physicians and Surgeons of British Columbia have him charged by the provincial crown with practicing medicine without a license. And he hired me as his lawyer. I mean, we're talking life and death. But what Health Canada does is they say, well, these products are dangerous. These products are dangerous. You need to be protected. We need stricter and stricter and stricter regulations to protect you. Do you know, we didn't have any regulation of natural health products until July 1st of 2004 when the natural health product regulations came into force. So if we needed really strict regulations, and, I'll ask you, when you walked into a health food store in 2004 or any time before, did you feel like you were in danger because these products were unregulated? When you went to your naturopathic doctor or herbalist,
yeah,
is there any, we all know there was no problem. Is if we need stricter regulations to make us safe, then 2004, that's the Wild West. That's when you should have had to be stepping over bodies to get in the health food store. And I've written a discussion paper on this for the Natural Health Product Protection Association.
Yep.
And at the last page of that, I include a table from a risk analysis that an expert named Professor Ron Law did in 2004, using largely Canadian government statistics. So this is when we're at most at danger if you accept we need stricter regulations. And in 2004, as a Canadian, you were 14 times more likely to be struck by lightning than to be killed by a natural health product. We don't need any federal government involvement. The Food and Drug Act is a criminal law power, and these products are not dangerous enough to warrant the criminal exercise of criminal law power. So the whole thing is just absolutely absurd. And then they don't take the risk into account of removing the products. And it's not about health. If you look at the Food and Drug Act and our regulations, nowhere in there is Health Canada under any obligation to protect health, to promote health, to do things safely, to do anything in the public interest at all. It's a criminal law power, and they're not there to protect our health. Health Canada is there to protect or to enforce the Food and Drug Act and regulations. And the Food and Drug Act and regulations, there's nothing in there that says that you have to protect our health. This is actually part of Canada is, for whatever reason, kind of the poster child of harmonizing internationally, right down to what we're doing with the World Health Organization and getting into this, we don't call it a treaty, but basically a binding situation where we'll even lose control over how a pandemic is dealt with if the World Health Organization directs one. In 1997, 1998, there was a huge citizen rebellion because Health Canada was trying to regulate natural health products as drugs and driving them off the market. And they were actually bringing in cost recovery, which is funny because that's what we're facing today is cost recovery. Like as we speak, they're trying to bring in cost recovery again. So there was actually a lawsuit against this cost recovery. And the day before the lawsuit was set to commence, the Minister of Health, Alan Rock at the time, backed down and said, okay, no, we're not doing this cost recovery, and asked the Standing Committee of Health to do a deep dive. How do we regulate natural health products? And the Standing Committee on Health is just a committee in Parliament made up of all parties. So it's nonpartisan, that any health bill gets referred to or any health issue gets referred to for them to look into and then do a report and make recommendations. So I think they listened to like 1,000 witnesses. It was the broadest consultation of any standing committee in Canadian history. And they came out with a report and recommendations, which you can still find on the Parliament website. And our discussion paper at www.nhppa.org has a link to this, so you can read it yourself.
Great.
And they basically said, don't regulate these as drugs. And they're not dangerous. And you have to allow traditional use evidence, but don't apply this chemical drug style model. And by the way, Canadians want increased access. You're Health Canada, you're restricting access. No, you should be promoting access. Canadians want access to these products. 2017, Health Canada comes out, tours the country, saying, well, we're coming out with this self-care framework, so we're throwing everything away that we've just done. Like, so all this intensive work, how do we regulate them? Here we are, and then bring the industry in compliance. No, we're throwing all that away, and we're going to regulate them the same as chemical drugs again. And here's the steps we're going to take to do that. And this is non-negotiable. This is non-negotiable because it comes from a committee of senior management. So an access to information request is done. This committee of senior management are like 4 bureaucrats, some with clear ties to international trade, none of whom are experts in the regulation of natural health products. So what are we talking about? Canadians don't want the strict regulations we have. Everyone agrees that you shouldn't regulate them as drugs, and 4 bureaucrats get to dictate our health policy in a non-negotiable way. So what is this policy? Under the Harper government, Tony Clement, the health minister, tried to get, it was called Bill C-51 passed. And so for those of you listening that remember 2008 Bill C-51, what that was is that bill would give Health Canada new powers, but also really high penalties. And it would impose it on all the drug industry. Now, we didn't care about, Pfizer and the chemical drug companies. Like, you can impose these against them all you want, but you can't impose this on the natural health product community. So, for example, the fine before was $5,000 per offense. Well, they wanted to increase it to $5 million per day of any violation. Health Canada, the Ministry of Health, the health minister, the bureaucracy, they all know Canadians do not want these powers and penalties imposed on the natural health product community. It just snuck in through the budget. With the cost recovery, they're saying we're going to use these funds to set up a new enforcement arm to make sure that, okay, so the other plank is we increase the regulatory burden on the natural health products so that they're regulated the same as the chemicals. But we need enforcement officers to be out there to make sure you're complying. And we need enforcement officers to go out into the marketplace and censor truthful health information. And we're talking truthful, but there's a company, True Hope, that has a product, Empower Plus, that, and I've run a couple of trials involving this product with, world-class experts. In my opinion, and in the opinion of several psychiatrists and researchers, it's probably the best treatment for bipolar disorder in the world. And there are 35 published peer-review, research papers, and in blue chip journals like the Journal of Psychiatry and the Journal of Child and Adolescent Psychopharmacology. Like, we're talking the blue chips.
Yep.
Lianne, all of these 35 studies are funded by governments, like around the world, not one by the company. So 35 peer-reviewed journal articles funded by government. There's so no conflict of interest here.
Exactly.
So the studies designed, and funded by governments.
Yep.
Well, prior to June 22nd, True Hope would have those studies on their website, because in sharing that truthful health information, they would be facing a $5,000 fine. Now they're facing $5 million a day fines, and not just the company, but any director, officer, employee involved in that publication. They've taken them down. And so you see, if we can't be told about truthful health information, if we can't be told how something might help us, then that product doesn't exist for us. Now, cost recovery itself is going to drive a number of manufacturers out of business, small ones and medium-sized ones. And then we'll lose that product line. And then prices are going to increase for those that survive. So basically, the chemical drug companies pay fees to have site licenses to produce and wholesale and label and the whole thing. And also they pay fees when they apply for a license, and they pay a yearly fee to sell for each license they've been granted. Right. And this forms most of Health Canada's budget. So Health Canada actually works for the pharmaceutical companies. Like, it's a clear conflict of interest that you would actually depend on your job for the companies you're regulating. Now, the next steps that they have is, as part of this full harmonization, we will lose the right to use traditional use evidence to get through the efficacy hurdle of licensing. another part of this self-care framework is they're saying, well, once we come out with this new licensing scheme where it's the same regulations for the chemical over-the-counter drugs as natural health products, understand we are not going to be granting licenses for any condition for which you would seek the advice of a healthcare practitioner. Well, okay, well, that's your naturopathic doctors, your herbalists, your traditional Chinese practitioners, your Ayurvedic, like the list is long. So, I mean, I'm confident we can get, a huge citizen rebellion going if, people like your listeners will engage. Mm-hmm. And this is the end game. If we don't stop it now, we're too far down that international regulation and actually losing sovereignty as a nation over managing our health policy, period. Yeah. If we don't do it now, it's done. So, you're not going to have access to these products in 2 or 3 years, full stop, unless you take action now.